The following episode contains or may contain spoilers. So if you're spoiler sensitive, maybe beware.
Yeah, you sensitive people.
Get out.
Oh, get in. Okay, I got this. It's been so long. Welcome to the Phantom Zone, 3 fans, 1 podcast in a sea of comics. I'm Noah.
Kayla.
And Jared.
Yay, it feels like it's been forever. So, guess what we're talking about today? Something that so needs to be talked about.
Well, in light of recent events.
It's the pressing news of the day, guys.
Yeah. So this episode is like we did a few before, but we're deciding to review a movie that had already come out, or just generally talk about it. Open up the can of worms on that, and we decided to do the Justice League movie.
Opening up a can of worms is like the perfect way to describe what we're doing.
Yeah, that's very true. With the Snyder Cut being announced and HBO Max coming out and no new superhero movies coming out at the present moment, we decided to talk about this one. I was going to say this wonderful movie, can't say that. I was going to say this awful movie, didn't want to open with that.
Well, they already know once they click the episode what we're talking about, so they know all those things.
True.
You're just like this movie.
This movie. Yeah, I mean, so that's, and I did want to preface this. We're not doing this in support of like the release of Snyder Cut stuff and all of that bullshit and the harassment of the industry, even though the executives were the ones that meddled to the movie. We ain't about that life, and we're not going to make this episode about that. We might have an episode later about specifically industry scandals, and
there's going to be, that'd be so good.
Yeah, so just strictly on the movie.
I'm looking forward to doing the same episode again after the Snyder Cut's released.
That's so true.
Yeah. On that note, okay, so I didn't want to interrupt you, but like, I am generally for the Snyder Cut being released. Like, I think that's what gets lost in a lot of stupid conversation. Like, I don't like the Snyder Cut cult that's formed on Twitter, who are, by the way, completely mysterious to me. Like, it isn't clear to me what they're interested in, why they love this movie so much, what it is about the director. That being said, like, he's a no for me, like, to my neutral mind or whatever. I think he's okay. I'll watch his movies if they come out, if they seem interesting. And like, so of course I want to see what he would have imagined for the movie. Right. So it's sort of like, I think with a lot of those people, they think if you're not some weird religious devotee for this movie, that means you just hate Zack Snyder or hate his movies. That's not the case.
Right. I mean, I'm in the same boat as you. I don't, he's not my favorite director or visionary or whatever you want to call him. I mean, I've enjoyed his movies that he's come out with. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to watch the Snyder Cut because why would I not want to watch that? And I feel obligated to watch it.
For this podcast.
Because we have to. Yeah. Well, that's how I felt about rewatching the Justice League movie for this. I was like, I have to.
Exactly. Don't act like we don't care, people. I had to pay to rent to see this piece of shit again. So okay, okay.
It's on HBO, guys.
I looked.
Yeah, it's on HBO.
Oh
well.
Well, we both messed up then. We both messed up.
Yeah, we done fucked up.
Well, sorry guys. But I also bought. So this is how much of a fan and a collector I am, and like my comic book tendency is. I have the special edition, like steelbook version of this movie even after I saw it in theaters. Like, I just had to have it.
You're a nerd.
I know. Sorry.
Guilty. I'm the same way. I have every issue of every Thor comic I've ever hated. Okay.
Okay. So let's get into the movie, and because I had mixed feelings about this movie going in. As a Flash fan, I was super excited to like finally get to see the Flash.
Why?
Well, just because the Flash was in the movie, I was so excited.
He wasn't in that movie.
Oh.
I mean, there was a speedster, but I don't know if it was the Flash.
I mean, it was like an alternate version.
Yeah,
you know what I
so
mean. Like that's something.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll break down. So this movie comes out after Wonder Woman, because it was Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Wonder Woman, and this one. So you have, I think, right off the bat, this movie was doing something interesting prior to seeing it. They were pretty much introducing 3 huge characters in the movie without knowing, without anybody being exposed to them prior, except for in Batman vs. Superman. So that's the Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg. So, I mean, anybody that reads the comics, those are huge characters. Those are pillar.
They had quite a job to do.
Right. And so it was, I guess it was disconcerting whenever leading up to the movie, you start hearing these things, or articles are being released, or rumors are going around that the movie was supposed to be this way, and then it was that way, and then it was supposed to be like 3 hours long, and they cut it down to 2 hours, and it was like, oh, okay, well, I hope they can get these origins in, or how are they going to introduce these characters? Because I feel like if Batman and Superman are in it, we don't need their origin story, obviously. We're done. They even had their own movie that had both of their names in it already. We're done with those. After seeing this movie, I think a huge thing that was missing from it was the origin stuff, or people getting to warm up to these other characters that were in it. Because we already got Wonder Woman. Yeah. Everybody loved Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I was going to say she was the best part of the movie. She's great.
Yeah. In a sense, right? She was woefully underused. And the there's so many details here to cover, but just since that comes up, they had so much goodwill that was produced with the Wonder Woman movie. She was a hot property, and because they had this vision that existed before the success of that movie, I mean, I mostly in this case blame Zack Snyder, even though most of this stuff is not his fault. Rather than really utilize that character and put her center stage, they couldn't be bothered to do that, and I think they failed partly because of that. She is great when she's in this, but she's not in it enough, and it's not enough about her story.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, so who's the story about? You know, so it's like, what is this movie really about? So you have this villain that nobody really knows trying to get these cubes for some reason
that weren't mentioned.
And then, you know, you have these characters that are kind of just thrown together for no necessarily particular reason, except for pretty much Batman or Diana being like, there's crazy stuff happening, you need to come and help. I mean, Aquaman kind of got pushed in that direction because he directly fought Steppenwolf, and then that's when he stepped up and was like, okay, I'm going to help these guys. But I mean, as far as the Flash and Cyborg, like, I don't know. It just felt like a big mishmash of so many parts moving and really not after watching this movie again, I was like, well, what was this about? Like, I don't like just to bring Superman back. Like, you should have just left him kind of dead for one movie. I mean,
yeah.
What it looked like to me, by the way, was that like somebody watched The Avengers, who was a computer, and then tried to reassemble the way that movie worked, but in a way they didn't really understand the movie itself. Like, they just took chunks of it. So again, if you look at the Avengers movie, and I'm not going to keep relating these two, but in this way, it's just sort of obvious, which is I
mean, that's what they were trying to do. So
exactly, you're absolutely right. But as the shameless Marvel fan here, I have to like hold myself back from that. But the point being is that like they just in Avengers, all of the reasons these people come together are really organic to their stories. Mm-hmm. And there isn't even a sort of like, we've got to assemble the assemblers or something like that. Like Nick Fury partly wants to do that, but if you look, I mean, like Loki comes, Thor's trying to get him. Thor interweaves with the rest of the Avengers on this basis, similar to the Hulk. I mean, sort of like you have S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who in Hawkeye who have been like co-opted by him. So anyway, it's very organic and like story driven. In this, they were like, well, we need them all to come together. Who does it? Batman gets them. Why? Don't worry about that. So it just feels like contrived from the beginning. The very like point of this all coming together.
Well, I think the point of that the reason the audience goes in knowing each of the characters' motivations. So when you can comment on how effortlessly that was done and how brilliant it was. Like, oh well, of course all these characters are fighting Loki.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was because they had already built up the established universe. Obviously, this has been like said up and down 3 ways. But chuckle. They just rushed the project and they tried to do too much in one movie. Did you read that the Snyder Cut's supposed to be either a 4-hour movie or released in 6-part installments?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're doing this supposed like master version of it, and it's a whole lot longer because they recognize that they needed to do a lot more. They just tried to do way too much. They didn't have the established universe. They tried to establish the problem and the universe and the characters and the team all in one movie. So
yeah, and very quickly too. I mean, yeah, I'm trying to like think of like why, like, I don't know the reasoning behind it. And hopefully with, the Snyder Cut movie that comes out, I mean, I hope it's good. I really do. I mean, I'm not really going to hold my breath for it because if you think about it, the bigger picture, it's not going to matter. And if it does matter that this was good and they base everything off of that, then okay, that's cool. But the way everything's currently going and they're doing standalone movies or what have you, it's just kind of like, okay, so we're going to get this little piece of something that's not going to matter, but hopefully it makes the movie better. But Kayla, you brought up a good point where it's like, okay, so if they're going to make a 4-hour long movie or a 6-part, however long that's going to be each episode, then why were you trying to do that story in the first place? Like, you, as a director and a movie maker, know that you have to cut a movie down to a watchable length. And
that's right.
That's not a watchable length. And if so I don't know if it's just because he's gotten this freedom that he's like, okay, now I can put everything in that I wanted to be in the first place. That would make sense. But if it needed that in the first place, movie would have never been successful. And the fans wouldn't. I mean, we would have been at the same place. So yeah, I mean,
I read that all of the actors agreed to come back to, because originally there wasn't going to be any reshoots, but all of the actors agreed to go back and film additional scenes for this cut.
Right.
It's going to make the movie better. I don't like it can't get worse, right? So it's going to be an improvement.
Bingo.
To what we already have, but I'm worried about the precedent it kind of sets for nerds in the future. If you whine enough, the creators and the actors are going to feel guilty enough to go back and redo things for the audience. That's not how art's supposed to work.
Right.
Because I feel that way too, but at the same time, it's like from a kind of like market standpoint, Disney, or them too, but Warner Brothers doesn't care.
Not yet. It's not Disney yet.
No, but the thing is, this was always on the table. They don't care about the politics of this or like who they're rewarding. They just see it as people who are saying we want something and they're giving them that.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of like, it's like, I mean, at some level, I want to be like, no, the Snyder people are doing the right thing in that way, which is like, if you want to see something, if you want them to make something, start a campaign and really, like go for it. I just don't like that they're bullies and seem to be kind of a lot of crazy people in that mix, but just if they just if somebody goes to FX and is like, we want a Moon Knight movie and we don't care, I'm like, okay, yeah, get it.
Yeah, I mean,
all right, you heard it here, folks. I'm gonna start campaigning for those Batboy movies.
Hell yeah, do it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm with that.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, obviously, there's always like extremists and radicals and crazy people within like every group or every movement or whatever. I mean, I feel weird for them calling it a movement. I feel like it's only acceptable in that all the donations that they made or the money that particular movement made went to suicide awareness. So, and prevention. So that's fine. I will give the Snyder,
Yeah, that's great.
Release the Snyder Cut stuff that, but it is on the other side. It is harassment. It is that. I mean, you have to like. These are creative people. These are writers. These are costume designers. These are artists. These are all that stuff. They're making this movie, and just because you don't like it doesn't mean that they should either not have their job or, go back to the drawing board and do something to cater to your needs. I mean, that's the creative. If you don't like it, don't watch it.
Okay, but we've given those people more than enough attention on this episode. Totally agree. We're all like, they're annoying and shut up. Okay. But we got to focus on this movie because there's a lot to get to. And I wanted to kind of follow up on what Kayla said here, which is that like, you're talking about how long this thing is. It's way too long and then cut it down. So here's my fear about that is that that's not the only thing wrong with this movie. And there's not that you're wrong. I think you're absolutely right. That's how sort of poorly produced this movie was there isn't one thing, even one major thing wrong with it. If it was longer, like this is still poorly conceived, poorly written, poorly set up. And I think we can get into each one of those. So I'm not just sort of hyperbolic, like just listing off things. There are good things too. And actually, I think Noah wanted to talk about like we should probably say some stuff that we did like about this movie. So it's just not all.
Yeah. This isn't going to be...
the women were really good. I liked the women in the movie.
That is good point.
from Wonder Woman to Lois Lane, I think, especially those two, I think were just brilliant. And I liked their scenes a lot. I liked their acting a lot. Every time their character was on screen, I kind of felt something, So...
Martha Kent is great in it.
Yeah, exactly. I just think kind of the women stole the show in the movie, but I don't even want to compare the amount of screen time because that would make me sad. But
yeah. Sorry, I mispronounced it. It's Martha! Martha Kent is really, really good at it.
Let's move away from that.
Fair enough.
No,
hey,
just
I didn't write
Martha
that part.
thing.
Okay. No, I know. I didn't write that. They did that. That was them.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think... While rewatching this, okay, so let's start at the beginning. So the first scene you see is this weird handheld video of Superman. And this was during Mustache Gate, when they had to CGI his face to whatever.
I hate that you used Mustache Gate.
It doesn't need a gate. Fair enough. That's a good word, but it's like...
Yeah, I mean, it's only mostly a play on words, but I mean... So that like set the tone for the entire movie for me, because I was like,
sure,
oh yeah, I forgot about this. But the saving part of this movie. So when rewatching it, I also forgot about the amazing Wonder Woman scene. Like the first time that you see her when she's in Paris and she saves that group of people from the terrorists. That scene is amazing. That is Wonder Woman straight from the Wonder Woman movie. Exactly what I would want Wonder Woman doing in a movie. That scene is amazing. I love that scene.
It's like they were like, hey, you remember that movie you just loved? Remember that? Yeah, she's here.
Here's more of it.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what people want. Like, of course they do. Yeah, and I mean, just to echo what Kayla was saying, I mean, the women in this movie were amazing. I feel like every single one, even just the acting, was on another level than most of the men in the movie.
Can we broaden that though? Because I agree the women's performances are standout, but I actually think the strength of the movie is the casting and the acting. Yeah. That to me never broke down. That actually is the one, like, I have to admit, most of the people on this, even when I didn't really like Ezra Miller's Flash, like I just don't like the way that they chose to construct that character, but I like him in this. You know what I mean? But I'm like, he's good at this. He is good at being like playing this part. It's like him and Billy Crudup like playing his dad. I'm like, yes, that's emotionally real. And I felt like overall, I mean, I don't have a single complaint about the actors, their performances. I just think that has to, like, you know, credit where it's due.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, and this movie gave us amazing, even just shots or like things that you would expect to see from those types of characters when Batman's fighting the parademon on the rooftop. That is pure Batman. It's amazing.
Okay.
I remember...
I hate that scene, though.
Huh?
I hate that scene just because I'm like, why is all this lighting on Batman? Like, just, like, give me. He is a badass, and Ben Affleck kills it as Batman. It sucks that he's not going to do it anymore, but like, so yeah, it was like, yeah, but I was definitely like, why is he in fucking broad daylight in the first shot of him in this movie?
It was at night. It was at night.
No, but it's lit like broad daylight. Like if you look at that shot, he's just like, they're just like, the criminal looks, and it's just Batman like perched on a ledge. You know what I mean? Like it's in like neon lighting or whatever. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, point is, that's cool.
Okay, well, I loved that scene because it looked exactly like how you would want Batman to look. I mean, him creeping on the guy, him, pretty much getting information out of him, the way he took out that parademon. I mean, it's great. I was super excited. I actually like Commissioner Gordon in the movie too. I felt like he did. What's his name? Oh man,
J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons. I almost said Rowling, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna say that name.
Different one.
Yeah. But I thought he did a good job too in this movie. Cyborg Ray Fisher is amazing. I thought he did a great job as Cyborg. I feel like Aquaman really didn't do much in the movie, except for, air surf a parademon, which was really cool.
Yeah, and be there for Quinn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I do like him in the movie. Like, so, because I agree. I want to get to this later because I think some of the biggest problem in this movie is like that characters are in here and they have no crucial function at all, which was a complete misconception on the part of the writers here. They don't understand how a team ensemble needs to work, especially a comic book one. But I will say, like Jason Momoa, like he is a charming, fun part of the movie, and I never groan when he, when he's doing stuff. So like the scene with him and Batman, I actually like it. I think some of it's logically doesn't make a lot of sense, but either way, I like their sort of like what would you call it? Like their chemistry together on scene, and I'm like, I kind of like that scene introducing him. I'm like, okay, I get this. It's like economically communicated. I see what their motivations are, and yeah, I was like, it's just one of those things. Like, I also wanted to mention, it's like Superman's lip and the fact that Cyborg looks like shit, and he does. He looks goddamn awful
in some parts. Yeah, I mean,
but my point is just like I don't care as much about that stuff. You know what I mean? I'll admit that it's not, but just in the sense of like triage, like those things aren't so bad to me, and some of it's like, okay, whatever, I didn't like it, but that doesn't really hurt the movie.
I do want to say that scene with Aquaman and Batman, he let Aquaman, this complete stranger, know very quickly that he was Bruce Wayne and Batman,
and tell everybody in the crowd.
Yeah. It was very
like Bruce Wayne's one of the most famous people on the planet. He's like, oh, you're Batman, obviously. I'm going to jump into the cold water. Batman.
Yeah, very odd. Okay, I do want to talk about the Flash for a minute. So, no, well, so that's the thing. So Flash, if anybody has listened to this and knows me, I love the Flash. Flash is my favorite character of all time. And I actually really love Ezra Miller's Flash. I love it. I feel like
he plays a hell of a Wally West, doesn't he?
Well, he does, but he also, but the moments. So there was weird choices that they did with it, and to what you said, Jared, I feel like I don't know who made him act that way or what made them write the character that way. He played it very well, regardless of like what hand that actor was dealt. I felt like he played it really well. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point.
That's why non-comic fans loved him, by the way.
Right.
Like, and that's sort of like I'll give you a sense about how this was perceived generally without comic book bias, which was that like, because they didn't know Barry Allen's not really like that, they were just like, oh, he's fun and cool and interesting and coherent throughout the movie. Right. Like, it was just like, oh, you get what he is, and it was cool to watch him and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm interested to see what they do with him later, if he is still going to be the Flash, because I feel like we didn't get enough of him to even really completely, totally judge the character, because yeah, he has the fun moments, and if you look at that team, who are you going to really think is going to be the kind of fun, quippy, comic relief one? It's probably going to be the Flash, like regardless, and we got to see Jason Momoa act more as Aquaman in his own movie, And you got to see all the layers of him and how he can be funny, how he can be serious, how he can be super comic booky and superhero-y. But, the Flash, we didn't get to really see that, and Cyborg. So I want to say that I feel like he can do both well, because the difference between Barry and Wally is, Wally is typically more, I guess, tongue-in-cheek, and he's more goofy, and Barry's just more, he has a more level head.
Yeah, absolutely. Still like a kind of upbeat dude.
Right.
Like, Barry's not serious,
right.
But he's also not like a plucky comic relief.
No, but he won't hesitate to say a joke. He's an opportunist with stuff like that. So, like, I appreciated it. I mean, I also liked that with the Flash in this movie, you got to kind of see how you would act if you got to go to the Batcave. Like, I mean, if I saw the bat signal in real life, I'd freak out too. Like, he was kind of like the audience experiencing it. So I kind of liked that little thing that he was doing.
You've put your finger on the to me, a crucial weakness in this movie, which is that Zack Snyder and probably Warner Brothers generally have some conception about their hot properties and wanted those properties to be lionized and featured in this movie. But then that goes against basically how to make this movie functional. And what you're talking about, where it's like, okay, Flash is our everyman character. Cyborg can be too. But because they decided, well, these aren't really the characters we'd like to focus on, what you never get is a consistent, like, a normal person's perspective. In other words, the two normal people in this, namely Cyborg and Flash, they're secondary characters. They're relatively mishandled. A lot of their stuff was cut out. And then, so who's your protagonist in this movie, for the most part, is Batman. Yeah, I can really relate to a billionaire sociopath that, like, is the Knight.
Oh, weird.
and because they were trying to have Batman protagonized and the center of this organizational, like, sort of thing, they also sort of, like, nerfed the shit out of him. And he went from being, like, scary as shit. But look, whatever you think about Superman versus Batman, Dawn of Justice, or what have you, however the order of those words is, I believe Batman is intimidating as all fuck in that movie. Right. I very much do. Right. And in this, not so much. Because they needed him to be popular instead of the Flash.
Well, how dare you? But yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think. So, I mean, we're kind of teetering on saying good things and also saying bad things, and I think that's really the only way to do this movie. And also, I just want to, like, take a moment to, if anybody's listening to this and is frustrated with how we're talking about it, we're frustrated with this movie. So, like, it's just, it's one of those things. So, like, they did nerf the shit out of Batman. They really did. But they nerfed so many other characters in this movie, and it begged the question of, so how are you going to run another ensemble movie? Because Superman's back, and they couldn't handle one of Darkseid's minions without Superman coming in, and Superman literally just walked in and punched Steppenwolf into submission. That was it. But he had all these other characters on him. So it was just weird. It set a weird precedent, and something that I think quite a few comic book readers don't like is that whole, like, okay, Superman's here, or the biggest or most thought of strongest characters here, the rest of them don't matter. Like, this is the only character that can defeat him. And I think that's a really weird, like, precedent to put, especially in the first ensemble movie. Like, what are you giving these other why are the other characters there?
This is the most incompetent piece of the writing aspect. Because it's not about who you like the best. This is what people don't understand. I mean, Superman is actually worse in this movie as a character than he's ever been in any of the movies they've produced. I would say this is the worst Superman character that we've ever seen, despite the fact that he's just the beady uppiest.
Oh, I thought you were going to say despite the fact of Brandon Routh Superman.
Despite the fact that Henry Cavill is so beautiful.
Henry Cavill is great. The problem, of course, is that, like, they just think making Superman the superlative messianic figure makes him somehow better. It does two things. It reduces everyone else's crucial role in the movie, and it actually makes him a more two-dimensional, contentless character. The people that think that Superman is only good if he's the best are conceding that the only value they see in that character is that he's better than others. It's a completely mismanaged, it's not good comic writers that do that. It's only basically Warner Brothers sort of studio writers.
Right. Okay, I'll touch on that because there was a confusing thing that happens in this movie. It really does feel, because Joss Whedon did come in and essentially finished it. I know he was helping with the screenplay or in some aspect helping with it prior to Zack Snyder leaving. There's a weird thing that happens because you're right. When they do that with Superman in stories, it kind of makes him less believable and also certainly more annoying. But what happens, so you got to see Superman, you got to feel for Superman, especially when he came back and he had the whole moment with Lois at Kent Farm, and then his mother came back, and even the moments before he came back with Lois and Martha talking, and you could see the pain that they were facing because Superman was gone. Yep. That's great. That gave more to that character than him coming in and doing what he did at the end. So they did a weird thing of realizing that or writing it well, but then when he was actually back, not executing it well. It's so weird.
And what's really bothersome about that is how fixable it was. I can fix it really quick for you. They want to make Superman the most powerful character in the team. I'm fine with that. I don't think it's necessary. I really like it better when characters like Wonder Woman keep step with him. But let's say so here's what you do. Superman comes into this movie and he just better than everyone at everything. He's better at fighting Steppenwolf. He's better than saving people. He's better than disarming the mother box. It is a absolutely childish conceit. So here's what you do. There's a giant explosive machine that's going to destroy the Earth. Only Superman can stop that. So Superman stops that, but all these civilians are going to die. Only the Flash is fast enough to save all those characters. Flash can only do that. Only Cyborg can do the mother box. Only Diana can beat Steppenwolf. Hey, I've just made every one of your characters that you say that you're trying to build up crucial to the movie, and I didn't sacrifice Superman's great dominance and stuff like that.
You didn't mention Batman.
Oh, add all of them. You couldn't do it without Batman's leadership. You couldn't protect the vast majority of the environment or bring in the, the reinforcements without Aquaman. Let's say he, even though he's not ruling them, he gets the Atlanteans to come in and stop all the parademons. There are oh my God, it just bothers me, the missed opportunity.
Yeah, I feel like you, wrote down all of these, Jared McCorkle's Justice League cut. This is
but the point, I agree, but my point is only this is the principle. I need every one of these characters to be crucial for the movie, especially in defeating the enemy. The Justice League is like this in the comics, and I think that the Avengers movie just understood to translate it, which is, what's the whole Avengers thing? It was when Earth, defeating evil that no single character could defeat on its own or whatever. This is the same thing. If Superman can just win, why do I care about anybody else?
Well, yeah, that's the thing about this movie is that, did Batman get these people together just to bring Superman back? Because then once he was back, they kind of didn't need them. It is weird. It's a weird way to write the movie and write these characters. I don't know. There's such good scenes in this movie. Say what you want to say about Batman versus Superman, but even the warehouse scene with Batman is one of the most memorable things about that movie. This one has tons of memorable moments, but when you zoom out, it's just one big I don't know what this is supposed to be. They don't fit together.
And you mentioned a scene that I didn't get to sort of agree with earlier that I really love, which is that scene where Batman is in the Batmobile fighting the parademons, and then Wonder Woman swoops in, and then you get the Flash, and you get Aquaman. It's beautifully orchestrated. I don't love the colors. There's little things to nitpick, but overall, I was yeah, that's the Justice League.
Right.
That's what's happening right there is the Justice League. Mm-hmm. I was super into it.
Yeah.
And there is enough of that throughout this sort of thing. Some people have complained about this too. I actually really like the Amazon stuff. That chase scene really works for me.
Yeah. Yeah, this might be a little, I don't know, I don't want to say political or whatever, but it did throw me off guard from. I think Kayla might be able to speak to this, or maybe she doesn't care. But the going from seeing the Wonder Woman movie,
she probably doesn't even care. Honestly.
No, I am curious.
That's more likely,
right? That's why I said it. So, going from the Wonder Woman movie and seeing how you can have an entire island or entire parts of movies with very strong women without over sexualizing them, be a great thing, and I felt like. The women, they were just a little tiny more sexualized in that for some reason. Like,
yeah. Well, that's already been like talked up and down because they'll do stuff like compare the Amazons' costumes from Wonder Woman to Justice League, and where did the clothes go?
Yep.
It's not conceivable that these women that are warriors, they are literally made to be warriors, are the best warriors, I would argue, in the entire world or mythos. But they, for some reason, don't want to wear armor. It's just a little odd to me.
They're too good for armor. Yeah. I mean, where did the clothes go? Well, Zack Snyder took it. And and it's not an overtly sexist thing. It's just a subconscious sexist thing, I think. In other words, like, he has a certain aesthetic that he goes for. If you say, I mean, to be fair, he does it with men too. If you watch 300, it's like he needed to sexualize the shit out of those dudes.
Yeah, no.
And I'm not saying he's a closeted homosexual. I would never say that.
No, the point that I was more trying to get at was that I felt like we just had a movie with the Amazon, so you would think that like that aesthetic and that look would
absolutely
carry over, especially so quickly after you know what I mean? So I was just a little like,
yeah,
oh, they look very different. Like, what is different about these people? Like, they don't look as like, I guess, intimidating or warrior-like that they did in that. And I was like, well, it's probably because they all just have bikinis on. Cool.
I wonder if by putting these women in bikinis, I've somehow undervalued their character. Isn't that in every book about the subject? I don't know. Who could say?
But yeah, I mean, that scene though is great. It's really cool to see Hippolyta like get into action and do some stuff and really kind of stand her ground, and then show that she would rather protect her sisters than keep the mother box. So I thought that was cool. I like that part.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that part.
I mean, I also liked, I don't know if they tried to save money too much, but like the next time we see the mother box, like another mother box is in Atlantis, like when Steppenwolf, it's just going to like, boom tube out of the sky for some reason. I don't know why they did that. Can we just say that for a second? Like, boom tubes open up in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the city, in the middle of wherever. They rip a hole in space and time. Why does it look like he's being beamed up by a saucer?
I love it.
And this is like, that's just an art direction problem or a concept problem, because it's like, it's not like that would have been more expensive.
Nah, I don't know.
It just looks, it's so, okay, boom, thunder. Give me some thunder. Now open a giant portal, energy. I don't know. Anyway, but like, so Atlantis looked kind of cool. Like when we see that, the underwater combat looked cool. Everybody complained about like the bubble that Mira and Aquaman talk in, which we're luckily in the movie in Aquaman they didn't do that. But point is okay, it didn't bother me so much because we got to see some underwater combat. But I also thought, like, why is Atlantis like 7 people?
Oh, okay. So there was I will, because I was confused about that too, and I did research, and when I first saw that, people kind of corrected me online. So that technically wasn't Atlantis. It was an outpost far from Atlantis where they were hiding the mother box. Because if you remember...
Well, shit, give me some scrawl. Like, show me something.
Yeah,
like, tell me.
Yeah,
but yeah, fair enough.
I mean, right. It's kind of... It is a little confusing. Because in the Aquaman movie, when he first goes to Atlantis, that's his first time ever going, and he says it. And I was confused,
yeah, that's a good point.
And a lot of people were, because it's like, well, where did he go in Justice League? And then you come to find out that he obviously didn't go to Atlantis. It was just some place that they held the mother box at that they always had like guards at. So that's why it looked
see,
like
this is one of those situations where the critic, in my case, I'm like, this is stupid bullshit. And then a reasonable person's like, no, it's because of this. I'm like, I stand corrected.
Yeah, I mean, I thought even just that small little clip that we saw Mira in was great, and it made me super excited to see more of her. When she like opens up the bubble to make, Steppenwolf fall and then close it again, I was like, that is Mira. That is awesome. I'm all for this.
But there's two places, and it's like, which one do you guys want to talk about more? Because like, so one is because you mentioned Mira, and like they cut out so much Atlanta stuff. We know so much Atlanta stuff. Now, do we want to talk about how much they like just cut out from this movie and how much backstory and character development we did not get, or do you want to talk about how bad Steppenwolf was? Like which direction do we? Because we really need to cover both, just because they are two things that really cripple this movie.
Do I have to?
Was Steppenwolf a dog? Oh wait, Steppenwolf was the main bad guy.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, let's start with Steppenwolf. I feel like we haven't talked about that fucking Ivan Ooze putty monster enough.
Well, because he's not all bad, right? It's not as obvious.
He's like visually he's bad. Now,
yeah, like so ugly it makes me sad.
Yeah, they didn't. I'm trying not to be a comic book purist with this type of thing. There's one thing to, how do I put this? Okay, so this is a good example, and I'm sorry to bring this other character up, but Marvel just has more movies. So Hawkeye does not look exactly like Hawkeye in the comics, but Correct. He looks like a human, and he also has like he has like purple, right? So he has something like purple on his costume or whatever he's doing. It's great. Very subtle. You don't need to make him look crazy like the comics. Steppenwolf, however, the thing I was super confused about was that he's nothing like he's the shape, maybe just the silhouette, I guess. But like that, I think that really threw me off personally, because I'm now worried how they're going to do the New Gods or people on Apocalypse. So are we going to have Granny Goodness look literally like a gremlin, or is she going to look like a grandmother?
No, they won't. Here's the one good thing is like this was such a disaster. I don't think they're going to be using this palette or this design for anything. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's like away from the comic books, which Steppenwolf, by the way, isn't. He has had several images. It's instantiations of that character, because he's never had that striking an image.
Right.
Like literally, if you look at like the 90s Steppenwolf and then the 2014 like Steppenwolf, it's like they don't look anything alike, because the character it's himself. I mean, he's not the most developed character. Anyway, he's just this sort of secondary lieutenant, which sort of, okay, fine.
Also his uncle.
Like we're going to get to that. What's that?
Also Darkseid's uncle. So.
No, that's true. Yeah. But he's like, well, he's still a lieutenant, by the way. But okay, fair enough. That's true. He is the plot thickens. He is related anyway. But just visually, it's like the color scheme that they went with was like tan and dark ochre. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? It's like he's a vague, muddy looking thing. The face, the sculpt. If you ever watch that show Face Off, this guy wouldn't have made it past like that sculptor would have been kicked off on the first episode. It's this just like cheekboneless. I don't know. It's just so weird.
But I will say, and I will give whoever made this decision, the voice actor for it, fantastic. I felt like the acting itself of that character was great. I loved it. I wouldn't have expected that from Steppenwolf, but I loved it. So
it's the King Beyond the Wall, that actor, whoever it is.
Yeah, I could see his face. I don't know his name. Obviously, he's super prepared for this. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, whatever. We'll see. Maybe we'll see him again in the I don't know, hellfire pits of Apocalypse, getting tortured by the female Furies. That'd be cool.
Yeah, you haven't thought about that specific thing at all.
Sorry. That's what I thought about when he got carried off. I'm like, yeah, get him, female Furies. But
the animation also looks really bad there, because he's purely animated. He doesn't look like they even use that much motion capture. If they did, it gets departed. So he ends up looking like this really clumsy sort of lumbering thing, and everything else has to slow down around him to make up for this. So like Wonder Woman looks bad fighting him.
Yeah.
Because he's so weird and slow.
Well, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I do. it sounds weird complaining about that kind of stuff, but it's like, I wouldn't be complaining about this if this was a CW show. This was a multi-million-dollar movie made by a giant company. You know, so it's like if Marvel would have came out with a movie like this, it would have gotten torn to shreds. I mean, look at Black Panther. Black Panther had terrible animation during the last fight scene, and it got ripped to shreds. But thankfully, the movie was fantastic. This one...
Yeah, that's right.
The movie's not fantastic, and the CGI and animation special effects is really, really bad. Like, there's scenes of showing, like, what some of Barry's origin story would have been, like where he saves Iris, you know, with the speed and stuff. The effects on that weren't that finished, but it looks pretty much just like what we got in the movie. Like, it's not that far of a step down. So it's, you know, there's a little bit of something needs to, more polishing or something needs to happen. I mean, Shazam had better special effects than this one, and it had like a quarter of the budget.
Yeah, but this is kind of my point about before. It's like, this doesn't just need to be longer.
Right.
Like, everything, like, it was really bad visually. And that's the thing. It's not just not finished. Like, it wasn't finished. That's true. But the conceptions were often really bad. Like, Cyborg looks awesome in the comics, and he looks awesome in the Teen Titans. He's looked great. This muddled, like, it's not that it looks fake. It does look fake. But, like, the design itself is weird and indiscriminate, and, like, you know, it just looks bad. Like, but again, it's not just the finish isn't there. It's like the designs are bad. And it's throughout the movie. This is why the Snyder people, like, don't make any sense to me, because it isn't like this. It's like there's no, to me, indication that even from the bottom up, there's no good stuff to build on or add to, as far as I can tell. There are good moments, like like Noah's indicating. There are things that and honestly, I was just excited to see, like Batman fighting parademons. Hell yeah, I love it. There's always going to be a part of me that loves that, but like, what's the strongest aspect of this film to you guys? Like, what do you think that, like, if there was more of this, then it would be good?
Wonder Woman?
More movies before this movie came out.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, even the movie could have been, like, the whole time, like, just trying to recruit the other ones. You know, like, in a weird, Absolutely. Like, maybe they saw Batman as like, they had a scuff or something. Like, I don't know. Like, they didn't need to have this big, like, world-threatening thing to necessarily bring them together. You know what I mean? Like, Black Widow didn't get introduced in the Avengers movie. She got introduced in Iron Man. So it's like, you can
That's right.
pick and choose where you do it and then build on them. But, I mean, you really can't expect comic book fans or even just general audiences to fall in love with stuff that they don't even know. I mean,
here's a misconception they had too, is that you don't have to, like, you don't have to try to do their story if you just want them to appear. Wonder Woman in Dawn of Justice is one of the best parts of it. Not just on, like, my Wonder Woman-y opinion, but, like, critically, everybody loved her. She's explained not at all. She just appears. We basically know what she's like and what she's about. And they say, look, we're going to have her explained later.
Right.
With The Flash, with Cyborg, with Aquaman, they could have spared us all this bullshit. And actually, with Aquaman, they'd handled it right. It's like we have that moment where Batman's like, "Hey, aren't you Aquaman?" He's like, "Stop calling me Aquaman," and that's it. And then he just kicks ass.
Right.
That we get all this extra stuff with Cyborg and Flash. Like, we basically know who those characters are. If you want to just skip all that bullshit about trying to half-ass explain them and just have them appear, and we get a promise you're going to get their movie later on, and just show me kick-ass shit with the Flash. I'll learn about Billy Crudup later. I'll learn about his dad later. Just have him fast as fuck. That's all I need. And you know, and very similar to Cyborg. It's like, okay, Machine Dude related to the Mother Box. We're going to get that story later. He's just going to do some cybernetic badass shit. Great.
Well, yeah, I think, I think you brought up a good point. You don't need to explain everything. Have them in there, make people interested in them, make people want more of them, and then come out with a movie. Aquaman is a great example of that.
Exactly.
So, and I think that's kind of what they're going to be doing, hopefully. I have no idea if there's going to be a Cyborg movie, but the Flash movie is supposed to come out in a year or two? I don't know. Who knows?
Who knows at this point?
Yeah, who knows at this point? But yeah, I mean, so we'll see. I mean,
there's another thing here that I think is worth mentioning, and I think it's interesting because I think that a lot of times these companies forget that each character, even if I know who that character is, has to eventually be established in this world. So I was going to think, like, this Superman that they made, not in Man of Steel, I think he's very strong in Man of Steel, but the Superman we get everywhere else just kind of sucks. And the reason being is that, like, they just take for granted, it's like, oh, they know what Superman is. It's like, yeah, but we don't know what your Superman's like. You can't just give me, in other words, like, so there are these moments where Superman says a thing that's supposed to be very important, but they've not established Superman that well. They did Man of Steel and then had a bunch of other crappy movies. You know what I mean? But just point being is that, like, I think a lot of times they're like, oh, this is going to mean a lot for the fans because they've been with Superman for a while. It's like, I haven't been with your Superman very long.
Right.
Same thing with Batman. Like, Batfleck was great in the few moments that we had seen before, but there's moments where, like, it's like Batman's finally apologized to Superman. It's like that. Their conflict barely happened. And I'm supposed to, like, it's not like the 10th year of the Marvel Universe where it's like, God, these people have been in it for a long time. This means a lot. It's like, it's like, I don't care that I know Batman generally. I don't know. Your Batman is completely new to me.
Well, I mean, it's new to everybody because Batman doesn't use guns. So, I mean, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Hey, don't even get me started.
I don't even want to talk about that. Right?
I know, you're right.
It's just a whole big rabbit hole.
That's right.
He picked up guns like 5 times in the movie. That's all I'm going to say. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. But to be fair, like, it's like Batman's always been able to pick up enemy laser guns and shoot robots. That's like the loophole. They are just like, okay.
Yeah, but these guys aren't. I mean, they even explained in the movie that they use deceased like enemies to make parademons to feed on fear. So it's like, those are people.
Yeah, that's true.
But whatever. Beside the point. I think we're getting close to the end here, guys. So,
but I think it's interesting that it's sort of like this movie. And again, I just, it's not like I want to be so hyperbolic, but it's like this movie is so bad that when people argue, like usually when people argue about a movie being good or bad or something like that, especially comic movies, that's what they're arguing. Is it good or bad? To what degree? In this case, everybody's like, yes, this is awful, but whose fault is it? Like, why is it bad? Like, is it? And I'm curious the way you guys look at this, because for me, this just looks like a fundamental bungling by the studio. Like, to me, it's not Joss Whedon, it's not Jeff Johns, it's not, it's not Zack Snyder, even though I don't like his.
I agree. I mean, yeah, they came in at a disadvantage and they just pushed the disadvantage to the extreme, really.
Yeah.
Like I said, the only thing that really could have made this movie the equivalent of the Avengers that they were hoping for was just not to rush it, was to have all of the individual movies come out before. So, I mean, like, you're right, at the highest possible level, it was going to be a failure.
Yeah. I think that it... I mean, I said this before. I don't know if it was on a Patreon episode, Untopicked episode. I just feel like they gave too much weight on Zack Snyder. One single person. Obviously, there's other people that work on the movie and that he talks to, and things grow from there. But I think overall, the person that makes the decisions, or supposedly, before the studio stepped in, I think they gave one person too much to do with one quote-unquote universe. Because you have this one person, he did Man of Steel. That's great. He should have stuck to just Superman movies. And then either have him and maybe Patty Jenkins and James Wan, all these other people come in and do the Justice League movie. Because they're all doing movies. You know what I mean? Like, Patty Jenkins did Wonder Woman and James Wan did Aquaman and stuff. So I don't think one single person having so much power, decision on, like, how to do these characters. And also, who knows, the studio stepping in and making all of these orders and doing all these things and wanting these things. And then, unfortunately with his daughter passing away and somebody else picking up the thing and finishing it. So it does seem like that. It seems like a hodgepodge of, like, too many hands in the pot, but trying to match one person's vision. Does that make sense?
It very much does, and I think some of the issue here too is it's an organizational problem, and it's sort of like, it's not that the studio has a concern here. Of course they do. The issue is that it's sort of when studio, because you hear this in all kinds of like production sort of stories and interviews. The idea isn't so much that the studio has something they want and it's that they micromanage along the way. And it's very unclear whose artistic vision is going to be important. So in other words, it's sort of like, it's not that the studio, one of the things the studio did, apparently in conjunction with DC Comics, was that Jeff Johns, and he, I love Jeff Johns, but it actually seems like he was kind of unintentionally a real spanner in the works to the production here. He questioned a lot of what Zack Snyder was doing beforehand, and there's this expression that like sort of too many cooks ruins the dish. I think that very much happens. It's like if they wanted to make Jeff Johns in charge of this whole thing, then that's what they should have done. If they won't, but so the point is like, I actually think Zack Snyder had a case that it's like, look, you paid me to do a movie,
right?
So let me do the movie,
right.
And that's the weird position I am in to defend him, where I don't like his movies. I don't like his ideas of the characters. I think he has a jock, uncritical, two-dimensional view of these characters. But that's who you picked, so you have to let him do his job.
Right.
And it sort of seems like the studio sort of hired him, didn't like what they said, hired somebody else to come in and supervise, and that they got into fights, and then Zack Snyder had to drop out, but then Joss Whedon comes in, and he actually, I'm sure you guys looked this or saw this, he also didn't like how the studio particularly handled it. He also felt sort of conflicted, and he didn't know what they wanted.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it was, at the base of it, I'm glad that Zack Snyder will finally get to release his movie. I want to see it. I do. I want to see the movie done the way it was supposed to be, and enough time that they need, and it just wasn't good. It wasn't. It really wasn't. And I can't wait to put this behind me, just like Superman Returns. And like, this is how bad this movie was for me personally. I literally watched Supergirl after watching this movie. That way I could like feel fine. Like, there are worst movies
to cleanse your palate or something like that.
If you have not watched that movie, Supergirl with Helen Slater and all, it's so good. It's so bad, but it's so good. It is absolutely no comic book whatsoever. It's so good. I love it. It's ridiculous.
But what you're sort of, I think, articulating, I very much respect, because I feel like there is enough in this movie that is good, or reminds you, and I think this is the point, of what it could have been. Right. And I think that's what's frustrating about the movie, is that you have these moments of like, oh, this is just like what it would be like in a good Justice League movie. You know what I mean? Like, you have those moments, and it really is sort of upsetting. I think also what this shows you is that the standards for comic book movies have just risen.
Yeah.
It's like, in a weird way, if this had come out in the mid 90s or late 90s or something like that, this would be the most amazing thing. I mean, it still might be kind of crappy, but I mean, there would be things like, I can't believe we saw that, and holy shit, did you see Wonder Woman like fighting Steppenwolf? It was insane. But now it's not enough just to sort of barely sort of adapt these characters and not make them look like shit. Like, you remember that used to be the problem, is just the basic suspension of disbelief because of the appearance.
Yeah.
But that's not an issue anymore. They basically have that down. So the idea is like, well, you actually have to make a strong action film.
Yeah.
And they.
Yeah, I mean, they I think they know they shouldn't be scared anymore. I mean, they literally put Mr. Mine in the Shazam movie. So I feel like if you could have a diabolical evil genius Caterpillar, then like in the movie, you should be fine with like doing this now. Like, hopefully we'll see. I mean, so I guess
Noah, what does it say that Mr. Mind is more intimidating than an emissary of Darkseid?
He was more intimidating than Steppenwolf.
I was terrified. I was terrified of that one.
All right, so final thoughts.
Why, DC? I love you. I love you more than Marvel. Sorry, Jared.
No, I get it.
Get your shit together. That's my final thought.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, my final thought is 95% of this movie was not good, but the 5% of the movie I very much enjoyed. And that's it.
Hell yeah. Yeah, my final thought is the people that make these movies, the producers, the money behind this, DC, Marvel, so basically Warner Brothers and Disney, they don't give a shit about the characters. They don't care about these stories at all. They just want to make money. That's the business they're in. That's fine. But I think like what I want to leave people with is that when you're really pissed about this, it's not Joss Whedon, it's not Zack Snyder's fault. It's the fact that rather than let artists who do their shit and make the movie that they wanted to, you had studio executives who have no talent, no storytelling ability, have no understanding of these characters, take over. And when they take over, they ruin shit. That's what happened.
Yeah, down with the man.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah. And, so to end this episode, obviously we don't have any recommendations or anything. We did want...
Don't see this movie. That's what I recommend. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah. No, Doom Patrol Season 2 comes out this month, so I'm super excited. And by the way, Cyborg looked much better in that than he did in Justice League. But anyway.
Yeah, he did.
So I did want to just give a little shout out, a special thanks to Mahoney. So people that are on our Patreon, he had initially started donating and then he increased his donation, I guess because he loves us so much and then the exclusive content that we give is so good.
I can't think of any other reason.
Yeah, I mean, and he gets to...
Not one other reason.
He gets to pick an episode. So I did want to say, because usually when people donate for the first time, we give them like a superhero name and superhero power or whatever. You're kind of at our mercy whenever you donate to us. But he did message when he increased his pledge. He was like, "Can my puppy Clark get a shout out too?" Of course. He named his dog after Superman. And I think that's awesome. And he said that Clark is our second biggest fan. So we love Clark and we love Mahoney. Yeah. But yeah, so if you like the show, if you want more, you can head on over to our Patreon. There's various levels that you can go, or you could just not and go to our merch shop, whatever you want to do. We did want to say that for this entire month, any money that we make, we are donating to Black Lives Matter and the Marsha P. Johnson Institute. So money is going to a good cause. And then also always just leave a review. That's how like podcasters pretty much know they're doing their job. Like, we don't know how well we're doing unless one, you donate to us, two, you message us directly or whatever, or three, you leave a review. So whatever you're listening to on how you're listening to us, I think Spotify doesn't have reviews yet. I think they're coming out. But if you're listening on a platform that has reviews, just do that while you're listening to me fumble through telling you to give us reviews. That's our rewind review of Justice League. I have to say it like that. I get so scared trying to say...
Otherwise, it's rewind review.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Nice one. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at The Phantom Zone Pod for more podcast updates.